I'll be right back. Just 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna admit people in now.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you. We'll wait for a few people to join before we formally begin. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. You guys are very prompt. I hope everybody else joins soon, but we like to begin on time. So if people are late, they'll just join when they can. So we're really excited to have you join us. Thank you so much. Hope it's still hot out in this area. Is it hot where you are, Sal?
Yeah, it's been up in like the 80s and 90s, weirdly.
Yeah, here it's been really, really hot too. What state are you in? Indiana?
Indiana.
Oh, okay. We're in New York here on this side, but we have people joining from different parts of the country. So not sure everybody's different time zones and things like that. But because we have a lot of stuff to cover, so I'll begin now, and whoever will join us when they can. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the infinitely compassionate and merciful. I will also use a prayer used by the Prophet Moses, peace be upon him, both in Arabic and English. قل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. O my Lord, open for me my chest to grant me self-confidence and contentment and boldness to ease my task for me, and make loose the knot for my tongue that they understand my speech. So this means I hope that we all say everything correctly today, and that everybody understands everybody, and our initiative is felt with love and appreciation. So what I would like to say is peace, salam, and shalom to everybody, and thank you so much for being with us today. Um, very thankful for Sal to be here. We're so excited. He's our special guest speaker, and we hope that you'll find this event today very exciting and fruitful, and frankly fun. We had a serious event. The last event was quite serious, so we wanted to end the spring events with something a little bit lighter and refreshing. My name is Owen Aster. I'm the founder of Our Common Beliefs that I began in March 2017 after being a victim of several horrific hate crimes here in Westchester County, where I've lived for over 50 years. My vision is to share the commonality between the Abrahamic faiths from the Islamic perspective by doing various programs and presentations on Islam, film programs, and fun and interesting events like today's event, and events with authors of very interesting books. By doing so, I pray that it will bring love and harmony to our neighbors. I believe that through love, education, and knowledge, we can blossom love and eradicate hate. So, alhamdulillah, our last few events have been very successful. Our program today will be until 5. We're delighted that you'll be part of the conversation and cordially invite you to actively participate in the interactive Q&A session. Please note you'll be muted until the end of the program, when we will be given the opportunity to unmute yourself during the interactive Q&A. However, you're most welcome to ask questions in the chat during the program. Our Common Beliefs technical assistant Fatuma Hydra will be assisting us in monitoring the questions in the chat and on YouTube. And Fatuma would like just to say one thing, so please unmute yourself, Fatuma, and tell us about your book company.
Hello, everyone. So in addition to supporting Ola with the technical side of her events, I'm also the owner of an online bookstore where I specialize in diverse cultural books for all ages. I'll drop the link in the chat for anyone who might be interested in checking it out. Thank you.
So we'd like to start our program with the recitation of Surah chapter Al-Fatiha, the opening chapter of the Holy Quran, by a very beautiful reciter that is on YouTube. His name is Omar Hisham Al-Arabi. His recitation is in Arabic, and there are English subtitles that you can read as he is reciting. So I'll be sharing my screen for now. Where's the...
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
We say this prayer approximately 17 times a day. It's usually the first prayer we teach our children, actually. That's very meaningful for us. I wanted to take some time. I'm going to share my screen again and just familiarize you with our website so that you can refer to it in the future for our events and updates. So I will just do that, and it'll take a few minutes, a couple of minutes, and I can get out of here. There we go. Sorry. Let's go to the website. Okay, so like I said, I began this website in March 2017, and it's kind of, I call, a work in progress. So this is the home page, and these are the set presentations that we do. Before COVID, all of these presentations were done in person. After COVID, we did many of them through Zoom, and now we're beginning to do them slowly but surely, either in person or in like a hybrid type of thing. There's other events I work on with different organizations. So these would be our upcoming events here. There's a prayer for peace coming up. And this is an art action that I'll participate in our local church. And these are, reflections I have about, like, the past couple of years. In the spring, all these holidays were all the same at the same time. And then this is just some information for both our Christian and Jewish friends. So this is basically the homepage. And then this is the About section. This is the upcoming events section. The past events section is split up between 2017. So this tells you all the past events from 2017. We're going to be splitting it up to make it easier. So we'll be doing like 220 to 224 and then 217 to 220. But this gives you an idea of all the events we've worked on. And we'll keep going. You can go as far as down as you'd like. So this just kind of gives you an idea. And then one of my hobbies, and then we have testimonials. Actually, this is really important from people when I was doing in-person events that actually wrote their own testimonials about how they felt about the events. This is a reading list just that I've read. It's nothing, there's no links to it. It's just books that I like and I recommend to people if they're interested. And this is always updated as I read when I remember, to be honest. And then this one is one of my hobbies. I love taking pictures of nature, and I add different prayers that kind of resonate with my heart on each different picture that I feel kind of matches, and I try to do my best. So those are some things that I do. So I have a few more that I have to put in here that I haven't had really time to update. There's too many things going on in the world these days. But this just kind of gives you an idea, and you can always take a look at this at your leisure and see if any of these resonate with you. That would be great. And you can always, certainly send me a comment if you have any questions about anything. But this just kind of gives you an idea of that. And then we also have Yusuf Islam, who was Cat Stevens, and this is if you ever want to share a call to prayer with somebody, you can do it that way. And then we have some press releases here. We have a photo gallery of photos and videos of especially things mostly during like COVID, that things that I couldn't participate, so I would share my talk that way. So those are types of things. And this was the last formal big event was in November 2019. So this kind of gives you an idea of like how big it is. We have like we always ask for 7 tables because we have so many things that we'd like to share and show people, clothes, books, and stuff like that. So this kind of just gives you a quick idea of our website. So Fatuma is going to help me right now with doing, I think, the poll, right, Fatuma? Okay, so here's the couple of questions we have for you. If you could answer them, we'd appreciate it. You guys could see the questions, right? Okay, good. Everybody finished? Okay. Let's see what I can't see the answers. Let me see. Share the results. Where are the results? Oops. Oh my God. What happened? Do you see the results, Fatima?
I can see like the summary of it, but for the short answer, it's not showing the
No,
specific
okay. All right.
like answers. Okay.
Let's see. Every time I share the results, I don't get it. So whatever. It doesn't matter. We're not very techy here, but we're trying our best. So let's get into the program. I would like to formally introduce Brother Sal Lavallo. He's our special guest speaker for today's event. Brother Sal didn't send me a formal bio, so I'll improvise. He's the youngest person to have traveled to every country in the world. During his travels, he was contemplating his faith and decided to convert to Islam. He was raised as a Catholic in the US and now lives in Abu Dhabi. Brother Sal, how you doing today?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me, Ola.
I hope you had a safe trip from Abu Dhabi and you're here with your family. I'm sure they're thrilled to see you, right?
Yeah, thanks be to God. I am now in Indiana, so I'm a little bit far from home, but in my childhood home. So very happy to be back here.
Are you still jet lagged or are you over that?
I think I'm okay. I've been around for a little bit for about a week, so now I'm normal.
That's great. That's
I'll
great.
sleep when I'm old, you know. That's what I
So you're around lots of young nieces and nephews, right?
There are 5 of them from 3 to 12, so lots of different ages. Very fun to be Uncle Sal for the week.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So I was intrigued by you when I saw Drew Binsky. He's a young Jewish man who also travels the world, and he made a video about you that intrigued me. Um, I kind of like, I always dream about traveling the world, but it's not, I'm a little too old for that now. So I like watching these types of things and saying, oh, like kind of they help me travel somewhere without my having to really do anything. So I was intrigued about your video, and he mentioned that, you were in your travels, you became Muslim. So I was like, wow, this young man seems real interesting. So then I started following you on Instagram, Facebook, and started communicating with you slowly. And then I felt that I really wanted to do an event with you, as personally, your story was so unique and beautiful and very intriguing. And I felt that, others might want to hear it. So when I went to Umrah in December this year, I communicated with you and I told you I was coming to Dubai to see my family and that I'd love to meet you face to face. And I also wanted to see so many sites, and you were kind enough to give me a list of them. And then you gave me this amazing tour of the Abrahamic house. And I'll share pictures on my thank you email with everybody with all the pictures and videos that we did. I don't know about the videos and the email, but I'll send the pictures at least. And so that was a lot of fun. But I really would love for you to share like your story of how you were able, first of all, to travel to every country in the world at such a young age. So there must be a secret behind it. And also we're interested that, you grew up in the US, and, where'd you go to high school? How did that affect you? What college did you go to, and how you ended up in Abu Dhabi? So, and then, I'll ask you some intermittent questions if I have some that I think you didn't answer. So please tell us your story.
Yeah, no, for sure. Thank you again for having me, and I'm happy to share anything. So, and it's great for it to be interactive too, so whatever is the most interesting for you or others. Um, and I think all of these topics that you're interested in have been ones that have been spread throughout my entire life. So, the spirituality was something from my childhood to now. The travel is something that's always been a part of my life. So they're very interlinked. So it's hard to separate them. But, I grew up in Indiana. My father's Italian, my mother's German. They came to America when they were younger, actually to Westchester, where you are, and they lived there most of their lives. And then, but then when we were born, we were in Indiana, and then I think being in a pretty homogenous place like the Midwest, but having a more diverse background and having different languages spoken at home and stuff always made the world um, seem small to me or familiar, because when people would talk about home, they would be talking about places, thousands of miles away. And so that really made me feel like, okay, like home is the world, and it is this idea. And my family we like to travel around the States. We'd always take these big road trips. So I think traveling was something I did from a young age, and uh, the idea of the world being something exciting to explore is from a young age. And when I was 16, I then went to an international boarding school called United World College, which was in New Mexico. And it has 200 students, but we were from 90 different countries. And so that was a really incredible experience to have friends from all over the world, to have people from completely different backgrounds, and that even more so made the world feel small. And whereas my first trips abroad were with family or to visit family, so going to Germany and Italy or to Argentina, where a lot of my Italian family lives, once I went to boarding school and had friends from all over, we our graduation parties weren't all down the same block, like, in Indiana. Like I had to, if I wanted to see my best friend, I had to fly to Norway, or I would have to fly um to Africa, or wherever. And so that really started to make the world feel small. And as I got into university, I went to NYU in New York, and um, I started studying economic development, which was another way to explore the world. I was really interested in why are there haves and have-nots? What are the different political and economic systems globally that exist, and how does that dictate the world that we live in? And so I started studying economic development and doing a lot of traveling for my studies. Um, and simultaneously, I had been going through a spiritual journey. So I grew up very Catholic. But at the time, John Paul II was the Pope, and he was kind of always saying good Catholic questions and is intellectually interested in their religion. And so also going to Catholic school was exciting because it wasn't strict in kind of the stereotypical, there weren't like nuns and priests hitting us with rulers or anything like that. It was just that it was a normal school that had a theology class, and we went to mass once a week. And the theology class wasn't this is the truth. It was really more of like historically, how did Catholicism get created? What are the tenets of it? And so I was always really interested, almost in an academic way, in religion because that was one of the main ways that we were being exposed to it. And then when I went to boarding school and I was seeing people from all over the world, I kind of maintained um, my Catholic belief. But when I was 17, I spent a summer in Houston, Texas, with a group of Mexican Pentecostals, and I always said, that whereas Catholics are really about the Father and Protestants are really about the Son, the Pentecostals are really about the Holy Spirit. And that was very exciting for me, coming from kind of like boring stand up, sit down, Gregorian chanting, uh, traditional Catholicism to Pentecostalism and speaking in tongues and singing really loud and drums. And I didn't agree with a lot of Pentecostalism, but it did make me feel more strongly connected to my Christian identity rather than a Catholic one. And so for a while, I would say that I was Christian, and not Catholic. And I started in school and university taking a lot of like different types of like theology courses. Again, a lot around like the history behind it and like um, the the geopolitical and socioeconomic angles of religion and how that influences stuff. And so I started going really deeply into um, the the stories of Jesus and thinking about what is my relationship and what is my belief in Jesus. And I started to believe that he was a prophet more than God himself, that he was saying our Father, not my Father. And I was like, and when I shifted my uh position on Jesus, I actually began appreciating him so much more. And so then I started saying, okay, well, if I don't believe in the divinity of Christ, and I can't really call myself a Christian, and I was like, well, what would I be? And I started calling myself because again, I was like 19, 20 at the time and at NYU, so I have to be a little bit like hippie and counterculture and stuff. So I was like, I'm a mystic pantheist. So mysticism that God is everywhere, or mysticism that you can have a direct connection with God, and pantheism that God is everywhere. So I was like, I'm just a mystic pantheist. And I just like love praying, and I believe in one God, and I just pray. And so then I did this 18-month um, period of traveling and working or traveling to study and work. So I did a 3 months in East Africa doing a research paper on economic development in Tanzania, Kenya, Burundi, Rwanda. Then I spent 4 months living in Tel Aviv in Israel for like a study abroad semester. And then I was in Germany for a month with my family. Then I was in Abu Dhabi. I moved there to study another semester abroad for 4 months. Then I went uh, to India and I worked 2 months on an internship there. And then I spent 6 weeks in the Amazon jungle doing a project with an NGO in economic development in Venezuela and Brazil. And in that 18-month period, what I would always do was to kind of like pray with whoever I was around, So I went to synagogues when I lived in Israel. I went to Zoroastrian and Hindu temples when I lived in India. I went to mosques in Tanzania and in Abu Dhabi. And I would always just kind of, pray. I loved prayer. And, I was always very good at saying, what in the practice that I'm observing do I agree with or disagree with? And I think it's a really important way, not just in religion, but any kind of viewpoint, is to confront other views to your own and either be able to instantly agree or disagree with it, or take the time to think about what do I actually think of this. And so I was able um, to do that with the different like religions that I was experiencing. And it was probably one of the most spiritually fulfilling times in my life. But I also started sensing a little bit of like a community aspect missing. Like there was no foundational truth. And and then there was this period I was in Tanzania, and I was this is my second time there. I'd gone the first time through this economic development research paper in an NGO that I had founded working there. And when I was going to leave, we were going to slaughter a goat to be like as a celebration for my last day. And I wanted to do the process, but then there's this question of would it be halal? Like who could eat it? It was this whole thing. And they said, well, he comes to mosque with us on Friday, so it's probably like halal if he's kind of Muslim. And then they were like, well, he goes to church on Sunday, so he's also kind of Christian. And they were like, what are you? And and again, I'm like, oh, I'm not anything. I just believe in, whatever. I'm like being all like obnoxious 20-year-old hippie, or well, I guess I was 22. And and then I start explaining what I believe because I couldn't say mystic pantheist in Swahili. So I'm trying, this was my second time there. So I'm trying to translate what I believe in the most basic way and kind of like, bringing it down to that, the bare bones of what I could say. Um, I started explaining what I had come to my beliefs. And then this old wise man, he's like, oh, so you're Muslim. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, you just explained Islam. And I was like, no, all religions sound the same, like they're, and then he's like, no, like you said the five tenets, like you said, you believe in one God, you believe that there are prophets, you believe that a big part of religion is giving back to other people. You think that like pilgrimage is an important process, that there are physical spaces in the profane world, or sacred spaces in the profane world that we experience. And then I had also said that, the journey to the divine is not something we can constantly be on. So there's important to have times of years and ceremonies, like Lent or like Ramadan or whatever, where you spend more. And so he's like, yeah, you just explained the five tenets of Islam. And I was like, oh. And then I was like, well, can you tell me more? And after this 18 months of exploring all these different religions and everything, it felt like when he was explaining it, it was like the first time it was the truth and not just a truth. Um, and so I converted pretty quickly there. I mean, Islam is a very quick conversion process. You literally just say the Shahada, like, I believe in one God and Muhammad is a prophet. And I do remember having this big discussion with them around if the Shahada is Muhammad is a prophet or the prophet, because that was something I felt like I needed a little bit more. And it was like it was a prophet. And I was like, okay, I believe that, So it was like I went through that process, and then as any spiritual journey, I mean, it was kind of like a up and down roller coaster since then, of times where I feel really um close spiritually, and other times where it's something that I'm unfortunately like not focusing as much on. But I do think is the best decision that I made, because that also then gave me that foundation of community to discuss with, right? And having that foundational level of belief. And it also allowed me to go much deeper into my beliefs, because um there's so much like academic text around these religions. And when you're saying, okay, I agree on the foundation, then I was able to explore it, much more deeply. At the beginning, um, a lot of what I was looking at was more Sufi focused. So, like, I was still really focused on the mysticism side. And so I was reading a lot of Sufi text, and like having like Sufi practices, which is something I still feel pretty connected with. And then over time, this was in 2013, so over 10 years ago. And it has, developed uh, quite a lot since then. And a lot of people will say to me, they're like, did you convert for a girl, or because you live in Abu Dhabi, or, like, why did you do? And I was like, well, no, it's a natural thing. Like, I was told I was Muslim before I said that I was myself. And that's similar to the way that I think people should live. I don't think I should proselytize and be like, and I get told this actually a lot on social media. People are like, oh, I didn't know, or, and I'm like, that's better. I want you to think I'm a good person first, and then I'm not a good person because I'm a Muslim. Um, it's kind of the other way around. So that was the initial conversion
It's
story.
just a process, really. Like for you, it was a process.
100%. I mean, it was And I don't think even I told my family immediately, but I don't think that I was like, and I would go to mosque, but it wasn't a thing that I was, I mean, at that time I wasn't public in any way, right? And so I wouldn't talk about it a lot. I mean, it was just a thing that I did. And there was times where there was, I remember I started reading this one translation of, um, of the Quran, and there's parts, and I would like write down parts I didn't understand or that I thought were confusing. And I had an Egyptian friend actually who would always help me. I'd call her, I'd be like, "This sounds crazy. Like, what does that mean?" Um, and she would laugh at me and be like, "This." At five, I had to realize the translation I was reading was just wrong. She was like, "This is like not. It's like reading the King James version of the Bible or something." And I was like, "This is weird." And so. And it was really cool also to then so at that point I had traveled to around like maybe like 60 or something countries, and and then I worked for 3 years professionally, and then I had gotten up at that point to like 10.
What did you do on those 3 years professionally?
Yeah, so I was a consultant. I worked with McKinsey, which is like a management consulting firm. We would like advise global companies and different governments in the region on mostly on economic development stuff, because that's what I was focused on. But I also
Was
did
this in Abu Dhabi or was it from the US?
this was all in Abu Dhabi, but I was working in Saudi, in Pakistan, in Kenya, New Zealand, London. Um, I worked all Egypt. Was in for 3 months, so I kind of worked all over the world. In that period of time, which was very exciting as well. But then when I started traveling full time for the 2.5 years, and I it was really exciting to like to see the diversity of Islam around the world and see the different ways that it's implemented. And of course, I was familiar with Christianity, a lot of the different sects and stuff from my childhood. Um, but it was a lot of times I think that converts um they'll like their first question is like, okay, what are the rules? Like what is like let me check all the boxes, I'm like, what do I have to do? Um, and whereas I from the very beginning, I think this is lucky. I was surrounded by such a diverse set of people within the religion that there was always multiple views. And that I think is something that was important for me to be able to to come into my own within the faith, was to be confident enough, even from day one, to be like, I don't think that's right. Like I sense that that doesn't align with what I think it is. And uh, and I think a lot of people who are raised in the religion aren't able to do that from childhood, when they're told, like this, like when they're told something as a rule, it's hard for them to push back on it. And oftentimes you'll see that like something that people will have been told is nowhere in the Quran or is nowhere in the Hadith or whatever. It's just, a teacher told them this and they believe that, like the amount of I remember actually when I was in Catholic school, a priest told like an 8-year-old girl that her dog wasn't going to go to heaven, and she like cried for a week. And it's like
You told
such
her what?
her dog wouldn't go to heaven. So, like an eight, she's just like she asked the priest, "Will my dog go to heaven?" He's like, "No, it's just for humans." And I'm like, "What a silly," you know what I mean? So,
She's 8 years old, you know.
I think, but then converting in my 20s to something, I think what was great about that was when people would say, I was very good at delineating between culture and religion, and between religion and spirituality. And so sometimes I would go into, while I was traveling, and they'd say, "Oh, we do this because we're Muslim," and I would kind of maybe not out loud, but in my mind, I would say, that's not an Islamic thing. You're doing that because you're from, Indonesia or wherever you're from. And that in that Drubinski video that you first saw, I actually say Islam's the most flexible religion, and people are always like surprised by that. But when you look at Islam, the way it's practiced in North Africa versus the Mediterranean versus Arabia versus Southeast Asia, and you see such a diversity, and then you kind of see, okay, what is the truth that is woven throughout them. And also when you look historically, the reason why, people love to say that Islam spread by the sword, but it was actually spread by being really open and saying, it's easy to like, there's not a lot to become Muslim. Like it was, if you believe in God and you're on a path towards him, that is basically all that Islam is. And I think I
It was
was
through people's also behavior and how honest they were with trade and things like that. I think that affected people, and they were just part of the society, so they kind of blended in. And then people became friendly with them and saw their interactions. And that's it was kind of like, you know, like you said, like a osmosis kind of. It just kind of happened. It wasn't like forced on anyone.
Yeah, and I think it's the same with all religions that have like spread that have grown. Obviously, if you're like people aren't going to join something that doesn't appeal to them, right? And so I think there needs to be, and that's obviously simplifying it, but I do think that I loved growing into my Islam through traveling and not by being like in one mosque with one teacher or something. It allowed me to have my own um, opinions on things. And I did one time have I think I told you this when you were in Abu Dhabi. I had a discussion with a Syrian friend of mine, and one day he said to me, he's like, I was explaining something that I believed in Islam, and he said, that's not at like the way that you think of Islam is not what I was taught in school at all. And I like thought about that for like for a week, being like, am I wrong? And I was like really thinking through like the foundational parts of what I believe. And then I went back to him and I asked him, I said, do you think that like what you were taught was manipulated by your culture? Or do you think that have like rose-colored glasses or something? He's like, no, it's just, and he said, you know, being taught as a child, they teach you in a totally different way than you if you're coming into it on your own. And it reminded me of something an imam had said, which is that he said there's no rules in Islam, there's only recommendations. And he said the recommendations are for children and stupid people. And he said that when you're a child, you don't know how to get close to the divine. And so we tell you, do it this way and say this and this and we're giving you a recommendation of this is how over 1400 years we've gotten closer to the divine. you know and it's same that with like I think John Paul II said this. He was like, it's good for a Catholic to question their religion. Hopefully they come to the answers we've provided over 2000 years, of people spending their whole life thinking about this. Um and and then he was like, and once you're intelligent and smart enough and old enough, and you realize that actually the point of religion and Islam is to become closer to the divine, then the things in your life that bring you closer. And so I think for me, especially now, the spiritual practice has been always asking myself, is this that I'm doing today or the way that I'm acting, is that bringing me closer to the divine? And if I um, am able to say yes, and that's good. And if I'm saying no, then I have to really reflect on like how can I change this behavior or um, why is that in and so yeah, the travel over those 2.5 years was a really exciting way to explore Islam. But obviously I wasn't only going to Muslim countries because the first year was just a year off. And at the end of the first year, I'd been to 150 countries. I started getting some like media attention for getting that close. And then I was on this podcast once. This was in 2016, and they said,
Wait, how old were you? How old are you in that year?
I was
How
26.
old were you in that year?
I was 26. Yeah, I started traveling when I was 25. So I traveled all of 25, all of 26 years old. And in the second half of that, I was told that I could be the youngest to ever go to every country if I finished within a year. And actually on the podcast, which I listened to recently, I'm like, oh no, I'm not interested in doing that. Like I'll do it later. Yeah, I want to go back to work. Traveling feels a little bit selfish. I want to have an impact, and I work in economic development. I should go and help I've learned about the world. I need to now give those lessons back to people. And but then I did take a job in New York working for a venture capital fund. And but because I was in New York and because I had gotten to 150, I started getting a little bit more people encouraging me to finish. And then a couple sponsors came forward, like the main one being Marriott, the hotel company. They came and said, if you finish in the next year, we'll fund most of it. And so then that was a great way to finish the final 17 countries.
So what did they do in the Marriott
So
exactly?
because I was a consultant, I was traveling 4 days a week for work anyway. So I was staying in Marriott hotels more than you should. Like in the last um, 10 years, I've stayed 700 nights in Marriott's. So I had said in an interview, they said, how do you travel so much? I said, well, I have so many points because I was a consultant. And I don't know, they have a Google or whatever. They saw that I said that, and they basically told me, if you say this in every interview, which clearly however many years later I'm still doing, they they were like, we'll pay. And it wasn't a lot. It's not like I was like in Lux, they basically gave me like a few free nights in each of the countries and a few of the flights in between them and stuff like that. And then they sent a film crew to my finale. I mean, it was great. Um, and uh, and I still love staying at Marriott, so I'm a great former spokesman. But the that was really exciting to finish and like to see the entire world, and also to do it through an analytical lens of exploring economic development, exploring religion, and having something to do in an interest. Like it really for me wasn't about checking off um boxes. There was one trip which felt a little bit like that, just because of the way it was like timed and stuff. But I really was interested in learning about the cultures, the economies, the society in each place, and as much as I could, and being able to compare them to one another. Um, and then when I finished that, I continued to share these stories like by doing like YouTube and stuff, but I did go back to work. I still work in investments uh, for the government of the UAE mostly, and but every once
Can
in
you
a while,
tell us a little bit about what you do for them, for
yeah.
Abu
So
Dhabi government?
yeah, so when I finished traveling, I first worked for the former British Prime Minister Tony Blair as a liaison advisor between him and the King of Saudi Arabia and the ruler of Abu Dhabi. So he was, one of a dozen advisors or whatever. And basically when he would say, my team will talk to your team, I was the team. So,
So you worked with Tony Blair
yeah,
directly?
yeah,
Okay.
just for a year. And then the government then of Abu Dhabi asked me to join them to do investment promotion, so bringing companies into the UAE. So I worked there for about 5 years. I did about 50 deals. We invested about $1.5 billion US dollars to bring 50 companies to Abu Dhabi, help them grow. And then just like 6 months ago, I left that to help a European uh, family office that has like 200 portfolio companies, and they want to bring some of those companies to Abu Dhabi. So now I'm working there, leading Middle East and Africa for that group of companies and helping them expand into the UAE. So that's like the boring suit day-to-day job. Um, and
I mean,
then
that doesn't sound so boring the way you sounded. I mean, do you actually like you recommend different companies? Like how do you go about doing recommending these companies to them or these
yes,
investments?
yeah, so what I had done before was we had selected, we're trying to diversify the economy and look at what are the economies of the future because of the system of government in the UAE, with like with a ruler and with like a family succession structure, we are able to make like 50, 100-year plans because we believe that whereas in the West, you are typically who's going to plan anything beyond 4 years if they don't think they're going to be in office, right? And so what we had done is a big economic analysis saying, what do we think the economy will look like in 2050? What sectors do we think that we could be competitive in? And then we selected a few of those and then started to like build clusters by attracting companies and making the right regulation, having the right incentives, the right infrastructure for it. So two big examples that I spent a lot of my time on is one, agriculture, which most people would never think about for the UAE, because when you think of agriculture, you think of where I am now, Indiana, like rolling green farmland, um, and you think, okay, it needs dirt, rain, and sun, right? And Abu Dhabi, like that doesn't make sense. But actually, what it needs is nutrients, water, and energy, right? And relying on weather to give nutrients, water, and energy via soil, rain, and sun is kind of it's probably the most inefficient business practice out there, right? Like no other factory is like, oh, like we might have an input today. Like, farmers are like, oh, I hope it rains this week. Can you imagine like a car company saying, oh, I hope we get the steering wheels in this week, right? Like it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So with that, but we do have a lot of land. We do have really low cost energy, and so that's able to give the nutrients, and we're able to use the water in innovative ways. So we felt like in the future of agricultural production, the UAE is a competitive advantage. So we did a lot of investments in agriculture, to build a future sector, like what we think will be not now, but in the future. And similarly, we did some stuff on data centers. So we brought Amazon Web Services, like their data center company, $1 billion investment to have them come into the UAE and build data centers because we think as the economy becomes more um, a data centered economy that places like the UAE will be able to benefit that. Like in the last 100 years, oil was the resource that kind of like made the world go round, but in the next 100 years, it's probably going to be data among other things. And so, bringing in the data center is something that we felt like was a good investment for the long term. And so that's kind of what I would do is look at, and I consider myself more of an economic development practitioner than an investor, in terms of I'm always thinking about how can we like grow economies, not just how can we make money from a business.
So I mean that's amazing. I mean, who would think that agriculture would be there? But when I was there, I think it was the Museum of the Future. They had something about like in a building, like farming within a building on layers or something. It was very fascinating. So it was like an indoor thing,
Yeah, it's
not
like
depending on the outdoor.
yeah, like indoor and stacked farm. Because again, all you like you don't need sun, you need energy. And if you learn about um the chemistry of specific plants, they require specific light, like it's if you've ever done like well, you've probably not done like a winery tour, but they will tell you, oh, this part is shaded. And so it tastes totally different. So it's similar in the indoor like farming, but they can actually, the best example is a strawberry company that pitched to us. And have you heard of these Japanese fruits where they will have like, a square watermelon that costs $1,000 and like all these crazy genetically modified fruits? Um, the strawberry company went to like the number one strawberry farmer in Japan and said, "What makes the best strawberry?" And he told this myth of like every 10 years the wind is like this and the rain and whatever, and it produces the best environment for a strawberry. And this company then just they replicated that exact weather pattern, but indoors, and then that created the best strawberry year round rather than having to wait every 10 years for the rain and the wind to happen in the right way. So indoor, you can just replicate um, the environment, but it's easier said than done because there's not everything you can do that way, and stuff like trees obviously will take too long. So it's mostly now like leafy greens and tomatoes and stuff that is grown indoor.
Limited. It's limited, obviously.
But so that's the kind of business stuff that I'm like uh, that I have done since the travel, but I'm still going around like 20 countries a year, often for work. I still just have like the travel bug. In me. And then, whenever I get annoyed at work, I'm like, I'm just going to retire now and travel again full time and figure out life afterwards. So I think the travel bug never leaves you. Because I've always said I don't like travel. I like the world. And so I did want to go to every country and I was very happy that I did that. And that was really exciting. But, yeah, I was recently speaking to a young guy who's about to also go to every country, and he was like, "What did you do after?" And he said that he's kind of bored of traveling now. And I realized it's because he was just trying to do the goal of going to every country. I don't think he actually liked exploring the world. Whereas for me, it's always been really, I don't like getting on planes. I don't like any of that, but I love like meeting new people and like seeing new places and understanding a place in a new way. So I'm still always doing that, trying to go to new places and having new experiences. Um, and and who knows, maybe in the future I will do a little bit more like travel of some kind, but probably not any more record breaking.
So of all the places that you went to, this is like off the top of my head, uh, which do you feel were like the friendliest and more like open and welcoming?
I think that the friendliest are probably in North Africa actually. But for me, I always think of Algeria because I got stuck there for a month and I don't think I even exchanged money once. Like people would like met these people randomly. They had me come stay at their houses. Their moms would try and like all these moms would fight over who would get to cook for me every day. They I remember it got to a point where I was like, you have to let me exchange money because I need to buy like deodorant. And they're like, no, we're gonna get it for you. And I'm like, there's a limit. Like you can give me food, that's fine. But and then they bought me contact lenses, and I was like, guys, this is like uh please let me. And I don't even think I even saw Algerian money. I have no idea what it looks like. I don't know what it called. I couldn't, and so and it's not just about the money, but they hosted me and they were so excited to show me the country. And so definitely that month of being stuck in Algeria was where they was very friendly. You
When
have
you
other
say stuck, what do you mean?
I was trying to get into Libya, but the visa kept getting delayed. And so I could have gone somewhere else, but I was right next to Libya. And so I was like, and it wasn't like it will be in a month. It was like, it might be tomorrow. It might be tomorrow. It might be. And so, that, and so there's also places where people are very nice, but like there's a difference between nice and friendly. So like Japanese are super nice, but they're not gonna like be, um, like I mean, this is like somewhat, about like typical situations that the nicest people, kindest people in the world, but it's a little bit of like, stay to,
Reserved?
yeah, or like, yeah, like, or just, we'll be nice to you, but we're not going to engage with you, like kind of, um, that, and similar, like
Like polite. They're very polite.
yeah, they're very polite, but less in like the hospitality of like come into our home. There's a lot of countries where people would be like, "Oh, you have to come home and you have to eat all of our food," and so I that's always fun as a traveler to be like welcomed.
Where did you feel that the most about the home thing?
Um, I mean probably also Algeria, but I think uh a lot of places when you're in like very rural spots. Like so I've been in like in places like Mongolia or in like the Stan, like Uzbekistan, these kind of places, but also in like some like really like in the middle of nowhere parts of Africa, when you're the first foreigner that people have seen ever in years, um, they don't have a sense of what a tourist is or what a stranger almost is. And so you're almost like paraded around the village sometimes to be like, oh, this person needs to see you and this person wants to see you and this, and like everyone's so excited to be like, oh, we had a foreigner at home, and so that can be like really nice, I think. And that's also why I like to travel alone, because that forces you to engage with the local population more than if you were with uh if you came with a big group of friends or something. So that was always nice.
So, how, in your opinion, like when you were traveling, how did it affect you, I guess, your growth or learning more about Islam or appreciating it more? I know you said that you felt like when you traveled, there was, people did it a little differently in different places. But how did that traveling kind of, either make your faith grow in the religion, or
Yeah,
you
so
could tell us about that?
I can't remember when I realized it or found it out or was told, but I always felt that I'd converted and then I spent 3 years working and then I started traveling. But those 2 years when I was traveling full time was a part of my spiritual journey where I felt the closest with the divine. And I think that was for two reasons. One is that I think it was a period where like I had no major identity or like ego in a way. Because I think once I finished the travel and I started getting known as like someone who's been to every country, and then when I got the government job and I had like a professional title, so many more people now know me for those things than for like being myself. Whereas when I was going through it, I was able to be pretty like um just myself. I didn't have to be the person who'd been to every country. I didn't have to be this professional thing. Um, like in
You
the
weren't
government.
representing anybody or anything, right?
And so I think that was a more pure, like my sense of self was more pure, which I think allowed me to connect more deeply. And then the second thing is that, is just the exposure to the world and the wonders of the world. Travel's mentioned, I think we talked about this before, like 27 times in the Quran, and it's mentioned a few different ways. Like it like encourages people to travel. Like there's a few parts where it says like, have you not seen, like, have you not traveled? Like kind of saying, I built this whole world for you. Like, are you not gonna go look at it? And then another part, there's a few parts where it kind of like if it wants to shame some, like they'll say they are not traveled, or there's a part where it asks somebody, like where it says, like, how can you think this? Have you not traveled? And I like so I think that's an interesting one. But the there is something about like traveling and being a guest and being a host are both really important in Islam and in spirituality generally. And, connection with nature and, the although I wasn't like on a pilgrimage per se, but like kind of being on a journey, I think all of these things are historically things that bring people closer to their spirituality. And so for me, being on this journey with new people, kind of like being anonymous in my own identity is it was a wonderful way for me to feel connected to the divine. And there are parts of that that I miss, and I'm like trying to like I want to make sure I connect back with. Like a big part of that point too was like I had my like misbaha or my tasbih or my prayer beads. It's called different things in different countries, but I would always there's specific travel prayers in Islam, and like and the two biggest ones you always say is like you thank your vehicle, which was really before like thanking your camel, and you say thank you for doing the things that I cannot do. And I love that because I'll do it for like a plane. I'll be like, thank you, plane, for like flying, which I cannot, But it was really from before when you'd be like, thank you to my horse or my camel, which is getting me.
Right.
Yeah. And then the other one that I really like, which is more for road travel, which was the only form of travel before, but you would bless your destination and everywhere that you pass along the way. Like that's the translation. I like that a lot because it's, who knows if you're going to break down or what. So don't just bless where you're going. You have to bless everywhere that you may or may not go. And so I think having that mindful, and I used to do this thing where every day I would because the prayer beads have 99 beads. So I'd send uh love and positive energy to 99 people when I would pray. And so I think just being really, and I was traveling without a phone or anything, so there was none of that distractions. And so I often think
Wow.
back on those couple years as like really beautiful in terms of the connectivity with the divine. And now on this stage in my
So
life,
you
I've
traveled without a phone for how long?
for a year.
Without a phone, like so how did you take pictures or
I had a
with a
I had
camera?
Yeah, I had a DSLR camera, like a camera, and then I had a tablet that I could like email if I needed to email
Oh,
people stuff. But yeah, no, it was that was great, but I would sometimes just be like in these like long bus journeys, just like staring at it. I don't know how I did it because now, and I have like ADHD too, so I don't know, like I don't know how I did it, to be honest, because I'm like so um you need stimulation all the time. But no, I was very kind of like zen, um which I would love to get back to in some way, but I think it's as you get older sometimes it's like harder again. I think especially with that ego death part, I think you need to forget about yourself in order to see humanity and to have that appreciation, and then it's easier to reintroduce yourself in a way almost, and find that. But it's all part of the journey. I think that it's a I was actually explaining to my 8 or 10-year-old nephew, uh, like we were talking a little bit about religion as you can to a 10-year-old. And I was just saying, it's not about having the answer, it's about asking the right question. And he's like, how can you ask a question if you don't have the answer? And I'm like, and I was like, that's the point, and we were talking about infinity. And I was like, anything that goes like that is forever, that is God. And he was like, we were talking about like infinity circles, and um, we were talking about math, and I was like, did you know that math is God? And he was like, what? And I was like, I was like, because it's forever, and there's no end. And then he's like, that's not God. I'm like, that. I was like, what is God? And he's like, oh, like it. And I'm like, exactly, God is what you can't even imagine. And I was like, and so the fact that like, and I said, can you ever stop? Well, I was trying to explain infinity, and like you can always add one to every number, and so that means that whatever. So yeah, so I think that.
10-year-olds are interesting.
Yeah, it's fun to think of how can you explain the like and I don't even know what the answer, but the being on that journey I think always is exciting, trying to see how it can incorporate in different stages of my life
So
as well.
you said that you had lived like in different places, among them Abu Dhabi, to do like travel abroad programs and things like that. So what made you decide that Abu Dhabi was going to be your home, like of all the other places?
Yeah, so I think that a big part of it was because I was studying and interested in economic development and identity. I never really found a place that was so exciting for those two topics because of, the obvious economic development journey of and the growth and the way that they're doing it in a culturally inclusive way. They're not just trying to like make more money, but have people actually live a better life, which unfortunately you don't see in a lot of other like governance models. And then I think on the identity side, you have people from all over the world. You were in the center of the world, literally, so you could get anywhere. And it was just
So Abu Dhabi is very like international. It's not just Abu Dhabi's.
exactly. It's super international. It's connected to the world, and it's always getting better. Which I always joke I have three passports, but I wouldn't I don't want to live in any of those countries. I prefer to be in Abu Dhabi without a passport because I think that it is somewhere that's going to be better in the future. And you're able to be a part of that. Like even as a foreigner, I was able to like work at a senior level in the government in a way that was able to like have real impact. And so that was exciting for me. And to be honest, like more and more, I'm convinced by that argument. Like I think 10, 12 years ago, it was like, yeah, Abu Dhabi's great, but there are other great places. And now I'm like, the world is like, I'm happy to be where I am.
How about the weather?
It's very hot, but we also get legally 8 weeks of vacation, everybody. So I can't even like I obviously would not have been able to go to every country if that wasn't the case. But so I think that it was
8 weeks is nice.
yeah.
So I have one other question. Can you talk a little bit more about Tanzania?
Yeah. So Tanzania is where I converted. It was also, and I converted the second time I went because the first time we were there doing a project with an NGO that I had founded called Trail of Seeds, which was looking at how can
What's
we
it called?
Trail of Seeds.
Oh,
It doesn't operate anymore, but we were basically a few friends. We were all studying economic development, and we wanted to get field exposure, but we realized that a lot of the programs were more like voluntourism, like they weren't kind of having real impact on the ground. And a lot of the projects happen in one of two ways, where either they go and they tell the community what they need, which often is naive to what they actually need, or the other hand is that they will go and say, this is what you like, what do you need? And they will say, oh, we want this. And they usually if you just ask somebody randomly what they want, they're not able to think about it. So what we did was we hosted a series of workshops that would really explore what development is and what the community required. And then at the end of that, like 6 weeks of exploration, then allocate grants to projects. And so we did that in Tanzania, in Venezuela, in Brazil, and in St. Kitts, an island in the Caribbean. And for Tanzania, because it was the first project, I wanted to go back and see how the process had continued and like the success of our grants. And then when I converted that second time, I also bought some farms that second time. Then it kind of became more of an important place. So every year I go now twice to Tanzania, once to the farm. Farmland in the village just to it's kind of like my like happy place in a way, or it's very different from the world that I live in. It's still subsistence farmers. They're living on a little like slightly more than $1 a day. I mean, it's totally different than my life in any other context. And so it's important for me to go there once a year just to get like some perspective, and just to see
so
humanity.
you actually bought two farms there?
Yeah, I think now I have like um maybe like 10 to 14 hectares of farmland, but it's all of my zakat, like it's my almsgiving. It's not, I don't take money out of it.
Oh, so you kind of like donate it, the produce from it? Or
Uh
how does this work? Is this part of your charity?
yeah, well, so it's not part of Trail of Seeds, but the community that we helped through that project is now who I give all of my annual zakat to. So I give it to that group of like 7 families, and we buy the farmland together. So it's really it's not a business of mine. It's
So
my
like they own it, but you help them make it happen kind of thing?
we both own it, but I pay, yeah, I fund it, and then
I
they
see.
and they all, some of them aren't only doing farming though. There's a couple other businesses that we've opened, like a bicycle shop and like a clothing, like a sewing place. Um, but it's yeah, it's a like a village that like means a lot to me, and not only because I converted there, but because like now these after going every year for the last 13 years, it's it's really become another home for me, and so it's important uh, to
So
support
is
them.
that elder that helped you with your conversion still there?
He is, though he's very ill,
He's
which
very ill.
yeah, and so my parents are actually going to come to Tanzania to the farm for the first time in August, and so we're really looking forward to for them to see that. And then the his name's Mzee Mrisho, the old man who helped me convert. Um, he's there,
What's his
but
name?
Mrisho.
Can you put that in the chat at the name? Yeah, that would be great. So I'm going to ask some questions from the that people previously submitted. Then we're going to go into the chat because there's a lot of questions. One of the questions is, how has your perspective on what it means to be Muslim changed over the years?
That's a great question. I think what I'd kind of go back to what I said before, as I think a lot of people think that like there's like these very strict boundaries of what it means to be a Muslim, and I don't think those are true. Or they think that if they, you know, kiss a girl once, they're no longer a Muslim or something. And I think all these things are like silly. It's like being a Muslim is a journey. We say, "Forgive me for my sins" 17 times a day for a reason. Like these are uh, so I think as I've gotten older, I've become more comfortable with equating my humanity to my Islam, which I think it's hard to um, I think people often think about spirituality in a somewhat selfish, individualized way, as if it's about like me. And then I think once you realize like, oh, God is everything, then you're like, I don't, then it's a um, I think it's a lot less pressure on you, right? If you can realize that. And so I think how it's changed is just realizing that those boundaries are not as strict as maybe I had thought at some points.
So another question, they said, now looking back at your life, do you feel like every single moment led up to you to converting? And if so, which moment and it really stands out to you?
I remember my family was really excited when or not like excited, but they were happy for me when I converted. But my Italian grandfather, very Catholic, wanted to like sit down and just like ask me about it. And we talked for like 3 hours, and at the end, he kind of said, "Okay, like you're doing the same thing that we are." And I said, "Yeah, I'm on the same road. I'm just in a different car." That was the way I explained it to him. Um, because especially because I've never not believed in God. Like for me, what I believe in is God, and the religion and the spirituality is about how to get closer to the divine. I don't see a lot of differences um in religions in that way, in terms of the road to the divine is what we all should be aspiring to. And so I don't think that there's a real moment that um a lot of the spiritual moments like throughout my like childhood and since then I think a lot of the I still feel very much like a mystic in terms of I love the direct connection to the divine. Like when you go to the Grand Canyon and you say like, oh my God, it's because this is like, how can you not believe in God? Or, like when you're in love and you're like, oh my God, this emotion is it like these ineffable feelings of like beauty and of uh joy and stuff. I think all of those moments just uh cement my belief in the divine.
I think somebody asked a question, but I think they thought you converted recently. So I don't think this question, I know they were like wondering how you have converted when the world is in such turmoil. I think this was in the past, and
I mean,
um
yeah, I think maybe it gives you a little bit of like hope in the turmoil, but sometimes,
yeah.
especially being back in America, I'm like, whoa, y'all, how do you deal with this?
Yeah. And then another one, and then we're gonna go into the chat and then open it up for anybody who wants to ask questions in real time. What do you think are ways that we can foster more love and kindness across our differences?
I think that it's about um, connecting on your similarities and then learning from the differences. Like and doing it out of curiosity. And also, I think people can feel threatened by difference because they're not secure in their own beliefs. And I think earlier I said something around when I was doing that journey of the 18 months in the different religions, it was the key part was whenever I hear something different to what I believe, can I instantly agree or instantly disagree, or do I need to take time to think about what I actually believe? And doing that out of like genuine curiosity, and not, I think people are afraid to expose differences because I think they're going to be judged for it or whatever. But um, I think the way to do it is to first acknowledge that we're 90% the same. I mean, we're all trying to do the same things on this earth. And then, the 10% of differences are interesting. Maybe we can learn from parts of it. And we don't need to be like a fear. Like people say, what if you convert to something else again? I'm like, I mean, I don't think that would happen, but if I find if I if in my search for the divine, like there's more truths, why would I not be excited for that? So uh, I think it's
So, my husband has a few questions. What is the Christian faith your parents have? Since one is Italian, the other German, are they both Catholic? I think you said they were both Catholic.
they're both Catholic.
And he said, do you want your children, your future children, to go through the same spiritual journey like you, or what do you think how you would handle that?
Yeah, I would definitely want to introduce them to spirituality, but I'm happy that I was raised with like a deep sense of spirituality, but also a deep respect for like questioning of that. And so, I think I would just frame everything as like, daddy prays this way for this reason, and if mom prays in a different way, or if cousin does, whatever, just to say, answer any questions and like help them on that path. And I also think that it's most of my I'm happy I had that foundation, but also just like there's not going to be answers when you're a kid, I think. I don't know if we need to put too much pressure on them uh for that. Like I always see these like people love to share like a photo of their 2-year-old praying or whatever, and I'm like
And
that's
they're kind of like doing gymnastics at that age.
yeah, I'm like that
They
just shows that
imitate. They imitate
yeah.
you. That's kind of what they do at that age, and then they do a forward roll afterwards or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. I think it's cute, but I'm never gonna be, oh, praise be to God. Like they're speaking through this child. I'm like, no, like let them be a kid, like let them play. Like I definitely wouldn't want to like I remember some like as everybody like traumatic, like, being forced to go to church, like you don't want to wake up early and stuff. So I would hope that their relationship with the divine can be as like positive as possible.
Right. You want them to feel like love, and affection, and that, not something that's forced. So the other one, he was wondering if when you were in boarding school, did that experience going to boarding school, I guess with so many different people, did that have an effect on your spirituality, or was that afterwards?
No, I definitely think it did just because had people from, all over, and seeing the way that they practiced their spirituality, I think was really the beginning to that journey of saying, okay, like uh let's explore all of these different ways of connecting with God.
Um, so he said he's asking also, after you converted, in which Muslim country did you feel, I guess, that you really kind of felt the most comfortable in blending in? Maybe you're going to say Algeria again. I'm not sure. Abu Dhabi. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I don't know. That's like a good maybe it is Abu Dhabi because I think just uh like in most countries when you're going, like the sermon and stuff is in the local languages, and so I think that it can be um hard, but like I go to an English language mosque in Abu Dhabi, so maybe that's like why I feel like I'm able to, and there's people from all over, and it is, I think, especially in a religion as diverse as Islam, it's important to be in a diverse community because we'll have after the sermon, all like my main group of buddies is like uh, a Uzbek Muslim, a Palestinian Muslim, and then like another convert, and we'll all talk about like what we perceived in different ways, and we're not all in agreement. And I think that's exciting because you don't really learn a lot from agreement typically.
Yes, it's good to hear other people's point of views. So one of our guests who had to leave early, she has said something about giving some information from a mathematician and physicist called Richard Feynman to your nephew. And she says, I'd rather have, this is what this quote from him, I'd rather have questions that can't be answered than answers that can't be questioned.
Sure.
And she also, Dawn has a question about like, how long did you actually stay in every country? I mean, did you step your foot for an hour, or like, did you actually interact in each country with people for a time?
Yeah, so my rule is that you have to be able to explain to somebody from that country or like have a conversation with somebody from that country about your experience, which usually to me means that you have to eat something like famous, see something famous, and talk to somebody. Um, if you Google like youngest person to beat every country, Guinness does it differently. They've let people go into airports and they've let people like uh like they even let people at one point look into countries if they couldn't cross the border. So there are younger people who have technically like crossed like been in an airport, but I did lose my record last year though. But for a while I was the youngest to actually go to every country. And so my average is like five. No, sorry, I think my average is 7 days, but my median is 4 days. And then there were in the period of traveling, there was a few that I didn't sleep in. Um, most of which I've since gone back to and done bigger trips. But yeah, so there's 193 countries. My actually I have it on an Excel in front of me always. My oh no, my average is oh that's way more than I thought. My average is 9.5, but the median is 5. Yeah, so um, it
So it's
depends.
better than just being in airports. It's actually having gone into the country and actually spoken to somebody and seen something.
Yeah, I think that it's I was speaking about the person I spoke to recently, and I was like, I think of them more as like record breakers than and I think I happen to be both because there are people who just love traveling, they love like going to new places or whatever, whereas I'm more of like I did it kind of for a reason of like of learning, but um yeah, I think it also depends on people. Like I love a 4 day trip. Like to me, 3 nights, 4 days is kind of perfect for any like city. Like I love a long weekend. I have friends who travel a lot, but they do like a month in every country or 2 weeks. I'm like, that's great sometimes. But like really, if you would tell me, your perfect length, I like a 4 day trip in any one city. That's kind of and then I get bored and the learning curve starts slowing down and um,
Mm.
then I'm ready for the next one. I might do like, 4 days in 3 different cities in a country or something, but that's my favorite.
Packing it in kind of thing.
I actually I was recently reflecting on this concept or question because I had a layover in Rome. It was 20 hours, and I've been to Italy like multiple times a year for a long time. But in that 20 hours, I had dinner with my cousin, then I slept, then I woke up. I went to the Colosseum, I went to the Vatican, I saw the Pope, I got pizza, I bought my mother a present, and I walked 15 kilometers, and then I got back to the airport and I was like, if someone only did that, like they've been to Italy, you know what I mean? And so when I was like, that was really like short, and you know, uh, and I've been to Rome enough that I can like do it. I mean, it would have been exhausting for anybody, but I have had. There's no country that I'm like, oh, I didn't have I didn't have enough of an experience in, and I would have never counted it. Actually, that's a little bit of a fib, which I've now changed because. Uh, when I finished every country, I finished in Malta, but there was actually one country that I felt like I hadn't done a good enough travel in. And right after Malta, which was a big party with all my friends, Marriott sent that crew, my parents came, I went alone to that other place. So I so I had
What
my
was that other place?
I don't, it's my personal little
Oh, I
secret.
see. Okay.
It was my personal, but it was fun because it was I had finished every country really. I mean, I had been to the other one. I just didn't think it was enough. And but and so it was kind of nice to have this big party with everybody and then to have my own little personal celebration and be like, because I did it alone.
Oh, I see. I got it. So, one person who just had to step out, she said she really enjoyed listening to you, and she wanted just to let you know that. And then Mahmoud again has a question about like why Tanzania was the place that you converted. Why not Egypt or Algeria or Saudi Arabia or anywhere else that that where it was a Muslim country? Was it that he kind of you had a chat with the gentleman and you didn't have an opportunity to chat with anybody else about it, or how did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't been to Saudi or anywhere else before I converted to Tanzania, so I think it was just
Oh,
chronologically where I was. I did live in Abu Dhabi, but at that point, I wasn't for a few months beforehand, but it wasn't. I don't know, to be honest. I think I guess that's one of the places I was for the longest amount of time where I was like going to mosque with people there.
so it just kind of was meant to be. So of all the places, Dawn has a question that you traveled, which ones you definitely want to go back to? I mean, other than Tanzania, we understand Tanzania.
Um, I think what's exciting too is that I change and that the places change. And so, like I used to say that my least favorite country was Djibouti in the Horn of Africa because it was really boring when I went the first time and we kept asking people what can we do and they didn't give it like it wasn't great. And then I told that to a couple friends who had also been in every country and they were like, no, we had a great time and we did like all of this stuff. And so I went back a second time and I did all the stuff and we had a camel dinner, we went to this lake, we like went to this new mosque, we went on the beach, like, and I was like, okay, this was it was a wonderful visit the second time. And so that makes me think, okay, there if I blame myself whenever I don't like a country. And then uh there's places I go all the time like that I'm just closer connected with personally, like Tanzania, Italy, Germany. And then there's a place I go a lot for work, which is like Saudi Arabia and London and the States and stuff. But some of my favorites are still Algeria. I love Japan so much. I think uh, that like Japan is always great, and maybe I do also encourage people now it's very easy to travel. And so I think go to the places that are you know nothing about. And it kind of is like scary, but a big recommendation I give to people is the stands, like Uzbekistan, particularly has that's where the main part of the Silk Road was. So you have this insane history. You have really good food. The people are very nice. It's very safe. There's mountains. So it's like and you know nothing about it. So
Which
everything
countries are in that area that you would recommend?
like Uzbekistan would be the easiest to travel to, and then there's also like Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan. But Uzbekistan's a really good example of a place nobody really talks about or knows, and you can have a wonderful visit. And for me, when I was traveling, it would always be if I didn't know much about a place or I didn't want to go there, it suddenly immediately switched. I'm like, not wanting to go there is almost exciting. Like, well, like why don't I want to go? And then like, what will And you always there's that Pocahontas song where she says like you learn the things you never knew. And I think that's the most exciting part about like traveling and learning isn't like I don't do a lot of pre-planning or making expectations. Instead, I just like to let things happen and that can be so exciting. So you're like, wow, I didn't know this very basic thing and now I do it. It's and the if you're Googling before all the foods and the recipes and everything, you're not going to be surprised when you open the menu at the restaurant. Whereas if
Right. You got to do your homework a little bit.
so it's cool to go somewhere.
Now, how about like language? What other languages have you picked up now that you speak fluently other than English?
Yeah, so really, Swahili in Tanzania, and then
What is it? Swahili?
the Tanzanian language, and then uh, like Spanish/Italian, I'm like pretty good at just because of the family and traveling there quite a bit. Though I haven't done that in a long time. And that's really it, to be honest. I like mostly get around in English, even if they speak and like Google Translate and that stuff is easy a lot now. And there's also so much nonverbal communication that you can do because I often will go back and tell people stories and someone will say, "Was that in English?" And I'll think, and I'm like, I'm like, I actually don't know how we would have, communicated.
Sometimes body language, right?
There's so, and there's also very like I don't speak French, for example, but I like kind of do. I'm like I would never say that I speak it, but I can ask like the very basic questions of like,
Right.
are you married? What do you like? What do you have kids? What's your favorite food? So like it takes, not very long to learn that in a lot of languages. And so sometimes uh, you can
Just
you
like basic conversational questions. Yeah.
and there's so much, yeah, sign language and stuff like, like, are you married? Bad or good, like uh, you
But I
know
heard in Japan, like body language is different. You have to be really careful.
that is true. I think there are places where it's uh or I don't know if you've heard of like the Indian head nod, which means like it's like this, and you're like, is that a yes or a no? And you have like some places where like thumbs up or okay is bad and good. I mean, I've
Yeah.
heard of, like all uh these these things. So yeah, there can be definitely confusion, I think. And maybe these conversations that I'm telling people I had, like somebody else is sitting there, saying that American guy was talking about something totally different or weird but yeah, so I think it's I don't know how I communicated, to be honest, but somehow figured it out a lot of the time.
Holly, do you have any questions or anybody, Dawn or Simo, do you guys have any questions that you'd like to unmute yourself, please, and ask? Now is the time. Or we can continue chatting if you don't have any questions. So basically, when you're living in Abu Dhabi, like how often are you now like traveling for work mostly, and how often are you traveling for fun?
I do about a trip a month. Um
How much?
a trip
One
a
trip a month?
usually like and I actually like I have this like very crazy travel Excel. I don't know if any of you are like into like structuring and organizing, but I have this incredible, so I can so you asked a random like a general question, but I can give you a very specific answer, which is that like in 2013 I did like 13 trips a year, 2022 11, 21 13, 2019 13. So yeah, it's a little bit more than one trip a month. Um whether it's for
That's for
work,
work? That's for work or for fun?
a combination. So I
A
think,
combination.
and often I will combine it. Like now I'm here with my family, but I'm going for the next week and a half to work while I'm in this hemisphere, basically. Um,
You're gonna work while you're on vacation?
yeah, like just to meet some of our companies that are on this side. So like
Oh,
to combine it, like if I'm going for holiday um, to Tanzania, I will sometimes have meetings in the capital with some of our clients or something that are located there. Um,
I see. So you kind of combine it. Yeah.
for better or for worse. You're never on and you're
But do
never
they pay for that then? The company pays for that trip, even
uh,
if you're going part of it personal?
only no, only the parts that would be professional.
Oh, okay. Just thought maybe, why not? Um, so Dawn would like you to talk a little bit about like the culture of society in Abu Dhabi. If you can let us know, like, and I mean, I visited Dubai. My cousin lives there. So I have lots of pictures and videos I can share about that. There's so many places to see. And Abu Dhabi, I wish I was able personally to spend more time. I spent one action-packed day with there, and part of it was with Sal. We did the Abrahamic House. I went to see, they have the Louvre Museum right next to it, and there you could tell us about some other things they're building. And then I went to see personally the Sheikh, or the King's Palace, which was out of this world. And then I went to see the Grand Mosque in Abu Dhabi, and I felt like I was in heaven. It was just a spectacular experience. So I was exhausted that night. I mean, I was on my feet all day. My watch had like over 10,000 steps. So I was, I had a driver, thank God, but it was fantastic. But I wish I would have had more time to spend in Abu Dhabi, really. So yeah, do share with us, like, why Abu Dhabi, not Dubai, and there's other, also other emirates within that emirate. I know Abu Dhabi's like the capital, but tell us your viewpoint.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a very international place because they're really, it's only 10% of the population are locals. About uh
Really?
yeah, about tw 10 to 20% are other Arabs, so whether Egyptian, Syrian, Palestinian, Lebanese. And then you have around another 10 to 20% that is kind of like Western expats, and then you have like 50 to 60% that are like from or like more of like migrants from South Asia, mostly,
Asians, a lot of
or
Asians.
East Africa, Filipino. And so you have tons and tons of cultural groupings that exist. So we have some of the best variety of food. Like I wouldn't say it's the best of any of the kinds, but you can get all of the kinds, so you can get really good quality Egyptian food, Moroccan food, Japanese food, Latino food, like burger, you can get everything. So it's really exciting that that exists. And then, societally or like socially, because there are people from everywhere, it also is a really kind of exciting um, energy because everyone's always there for an exciting reason and has an interesting um, kind of like a life story for how they ended up there. And you can choose. I think there are a lot of people who live very within those specific bubbles. Like I was recently speaking to a friend who said her children are go to a school for in the language where they're from, and it's with people who are from there, and they're kind of living a expat life that you know uh like it doesn't matter where you are, you're just like with expats. But what I've done is, I have a lot of like local Emirati friends because I've been there a long time, and they stay around. On the professional side, I have a lot of friends who are like in similar roles to me. And then I also do a lot in kind of like the art scene. And so I have, friends who I'm connected with there. So that kind of creates a really dynamic set of people. But for me, that's really exciting because all the groups of people I'm around are from different places, interested in different things, um,
Can
and
you talk a little bit more about the art scene? Because not many people would think there would be an art scene in Abu Dhabi, at least.
yeah, we're actually one of the fastest growing like centers of the art world because we have a few really important sales, like Art Dubai and Abu Dhabi Art. On the kind of on the sales side, we have a Biennale and a lot of efforts happening out in Sharjah, and then in Abu Dhabi, we're doing big institutions like the Louvre and the Guggenheim. And so, with the combination of having like the museums, having the biennales, having the fairs, we're now kind of emerging as kind of like the one of the hubs within the global South. And so when there are people interested in art from the Arab world, from South Asia, from Africa, then the UAE is a really great place for that to be seen. And so that's also exciting because a lot of, and this is maybe a point, like people always make fun of Americans for like not knowing much about stuff outside of America, and I always defend that, and I say because they don't have to, like there are newspapers in New York that are only about New York because like you don't really need to know about anything else in America when you live in New York, and you don't really need to know that much about the world when you're in America in terms of what's actually impacting you day to day. But in a country like Abu Dhabi, when we're much smaller, we're in the center of the world, we have people from all over, that then creates a little bit of a different sense of the positioning within the world, which I think can be really exciting in stuff like art, in business, and then even socially when you're looking at the groups of people that you're surrounding yourself with. So I like it because it kind of keeps that international travel thing. And people have asked that before, and other people who've been to every country, they're like, when I went home, uh, I like missed the international thing. Whereas for me, it's kind of always that part of it has continued. And I said this a lot to people actually during COVID. They were like, I can't travel this year. I'm like, well, what is travel? It's really being exposed to the unknown or to being learning about the foreign. And I said that, you can do this in like two ways. Like one, go talk to somebody, go to a restaurant of, you know, of the foreign food in your town and like explore it that way and try something new in that way. I said the second way that you can do it is go talk to your grandparents, because do time traveling. Like, how much more fun is that to hear stories of what the world was like? You know, like that's foreign as well. And so I think that uh,
Or look at their pictures.
yeah, exactly. Or, you know, like I think that a lot of people, when they're like, oh, I love traveling, I often will be like, well, what do you like, what do you mean? Because there are people who love planes, you know, they like love the seat and like the airlines, and like they get really excited, like, oh, I'm on an A3, whatever, you know, and I get asked that a lot. People, these like, you know, airplane nerds will ask me like, what flight did you take to North Korea? Like, was it a this? And I'm like, I honestly, that's not my
It's like
interest.
my older son, he's into like, oh, I'm gonna be on the Airbus, whatever. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. I have no idea, but I
Yeah,
see what you mean.
yeah, or they'll be like, you know, they're anyway, like or people will say like they just want to travel for different shopping, or some people travel only for food or only for nature. Scuba people who've traveled a lot for scuba diving have totally different anecdotes, because they're talking about stuff under the sea. So they'll be like, oh, you know, this country has the best coral,
Coral
whatever, right?
reefs,
Yeah,
right?
you know, and uh so there's also people who travel for, you know, just for sporting events or like whatever. There's lots of different ways you can travel. So when someone says to me that they like travel, I'm always like, in what like what is the goal that you're trying to reach through your travel, and how can you do that in other ways as well? Because most people can't travel that much, and it's kind of become this societally like, you know, looked up to thing, but it means nothing if you're not doing it for an actual purpose. It's adding value to your life. So I think that's the question, is like, what value are you trying to get out of it? Um,
So Seema had a question. I know you said you love travel and staying with Marriott. I love Marriott too, and I love Hilton. But she also wanted to know, when you were like in high school, when you were seeing friends and traveling, did you stay like in Airbnbs, or you just stayed with your friends, family, or what did you do?
no, spent a lot of time staying with friends, family. So I think actually I stayed with people from boarding school in 75 different countries. And
Wow.
that was because when you're like 20, that's easy. You know, like now you're older, you like need a whole bedroom and stuff. Back then it was like, I don't even need a couch. Like there was a period, is like, give me a floor. You know,
Like you were
then
younger.
you get older, you're like, I need a couch. Then you ask for a bed. Then you want a room. You know, uh, it
20,
gets
you could sleep on the ground, right?
and so that's when people tell me that they, you know, most people who've been to every country did so in their after retirement. And um and my response is always like, then how can you stay with your friends all the time? You know, like it's harder, because but that's the way that I was traveling, was to stay mostly with friends. And then staying in their houses was really nice, because that's like a different kind of cultural experience. You know, you eat the food, like, but there are some countries where like Nicaragua is an example. I think I was there for like 10 to 14 days with a friend from there, stayed at her house. Like we, you know, we would watch a telenovela every day. Her mom would cook for us. We'd go out to the bar with her friends. Like we would have a normal life. And then when I tell people, oh yeah, it was 2 weeks in Nicaragua, they're like, oh, you must have seen this. And I'm like we didn't do that, you know, or like, and it's similar for work, you know, like I lived in Egypt for 4 months working 5 days a week. But when I've gone back for, you know, a few days tourism, I see more than I did in the 4 months. Um, and so yeah, I think it depends on what you get out of a trip, depends a lot on like what you're putting in. But staying with friends, I always preferred when I was younger, for sure. And it made it
But
much.
now, I mean, yeah, then it was cheaper. But now that you're working, you prefer to be kind of on your own, in a hotel, or through either work or what are you feeling about that now?
I definitely am like not as excited by like work trips as I used to be, you know, like and especially when I hadn't been to every country. If I could somehow get a trip to somewhere I hadn't been and explore that, that would be great. But now there's not a lot of places where I would be like, oh my God, like I need to be there rather than home always, you know. But the uh yeah, it also then, in terms of like being alone or with people, I do now like to go on trips a lot with friends, because I like to show them what I had enjoyed.
Experience.
Yeah, which I think
How
is
about like Tanzania? Where do you stay with the family that you know there, or do you stay like where do you stay there?
So in the village, they have a couple of these like small guest houses, which are, I think, fine, but I'm taking my parents, as I said, in August. So now that I'm like reflecting on it, it's
Uh-oh.
not great. But it's clean and it's fine, but it's just, a mattress on like a wooden thing and a bucket shower and a bucket flusher and stuff. So
Hmm. A little
it's
bit different.
those things haven't been around very long anyway, so I think humans can survive
Unless you go on a camping trip.
yeah, that's what's funny. If I would just call it camping, then it would be like fancy. But just because, like if just like that's a good idea. I'll tell them
Yeah,
pretend
tell them it's a camping trip.
or
So they
something.
have like, low expectations.
No, but it's fine. I think
Is there another town nearby that has a nicer area to stay in, or is there a capital that you go? You
yeah.
said you go to somewhere else in Tanzania?
So we would land in the capital and stay in a proper hotel, of course. But and then
What's the capital called
so
for us ignorant ones?
the political capital is Dodoma, but the biggest city and the financial capital is Dar es Salaam.
Dar es Salaam. Okay, that everybody's heard of.
Yeah, so we'll go to Dar es Salaam for a few days, um, and I'll introduce them to some of my favorite artists that are in like Tanzanian artists because I do a lot in the art. That's where I do a lot of my art stuff.
Oh,
And then,
in Dar es Salaam?
yeah, and then then we'll rent a car and drive 8 hours into the bush to the
Wow.
beach.
8 hours you have to drive
But it's
from
all
Dar es
paved
Salaam?
now. Used to be a dirt road, but now it's all paved, so I don't think that they can complain.
Oh, that's a big accomplishment. So
Yeah.
it's all paid from Dar es Salaam to what is the little village that name?
It's called Mangula and it's in the Kilombero district. It's small space, but it's
And like when you first went to Tanzania, what would make you go from Dar es Salaam to all the way to a village 8 hours away? Like what came on what did you plan that, or was this something on purpose, or it kind of just happened?
so we looked for a host organization that was interested in development in the same way that we were. And so we basically said, we want to come and give grants and allocate in this way, and go through this process with the community that you're also serving. Is that something that could be interesting? So there was a locally run NGO actually closer to the capital on the coast, and they said it would be great if you came and you did it here. And we're like, sounds great. So we planned it all around that. And then when we got there, or no, maybe a few weeks before we got there, they sent us a note saying, do you mind if we actually do it in the hometown of where the head of the NGO was from? And he was like, it might be like an interesting way to help his community, and he was going to be there, and something wasn't happening, and whatever it was. So we were
They'll
actually,
be there at a certain time and whatever.
well, however it worked, it was like, do you mind if we switch the location? And
So
I was
you were originally in Dar es Salaam. That's where you were
we were
originally.
like 2 hours away from it, which is crazy to think. So much of my life has been like impacted by that single switch of destination. But
Yes.
but he uh so we said yeah, and then we went, and actually within a couple weeks we had fired him because he was kind of a con man. And so
It was
we
what?
he was kind of a con man. He was horrible. He was like harassing the co-founder, and it was horrible. So we like had to, and we were like 19 years old. So we
Oh
had to like
wow.
we had to like get him out, like properly remove him from the situation, um, and continue with our work. And he was our translator, so that was t tough. So we had to find another translator. We had to find food, and we somehow managed to do that as no, I guess we were 20, but whatever, we were young, trying to figure that out. We had been paid, like the school had given us the money to go do this project. Like it wasn't our money, right? I mean, it was a grant that we had.
Responsibility, yes.
Um,
So the NGO head of the NGO guy was there though, right? The head of the NGO.
at the beginning until he became a con man.
Oh, and he's the one that was from that village?
Yeah, I mean, it does seem that, I mean, the NGO was real. That was real. So it's confusing to us what ended up happening. I mean, and this is also so long ago, and like mo a lot of it was with my co-founder. So it was really problematic really fast, and then we had to get him like we had to say you need to leave the city. We had the village elders tell him to go. Um,
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah,
So you
and
guys like went to the village and the village elders had to kick him out kind of thing
we yeah
for
we
you.
yeah we communicated the problems that we were having with him to the village elders, who agreed that he should leave and we should stay.
Wow. That's
Yeah, that was intense. I would like haven't thought about that in a long time.
that is intense. You're in a different country having to deal with all this stuff. It's
There's a
pretty.
lot of these stories actually that when I tell out loud, like I haven't thought about, but often when I tell them through the lens of a 33-year-old, risk averse, slightly more mature, whatever person, I'm
Like,
like,
how did I do this?
I'm like, whoa, like that was crazy. But but also I really was a hustler. I got stuff like done. I don't think I had anxiety about succeeding or failing, or like I had no sense of scale of what anything had to be. And so I just like did what felt right. And we like accomplished like a crazy amount. Actually when
You
I
guys
turned
had good gut. You had good gut instincts.
well, clearly not in picking people, you know. Um we had some level of instinct to, I think we delivered an interesting project, and now actually as I've gotten older and done a lot more in development, I'm actually like academically interested in what we did and being like, how could that be used in a broader sense as like a economic development model. Um, so every once in a while, also, I'm like, maybe I'll quit my investment job and go get a PhD and then to be a professor or something. But we see. I think it's all of these kind of future uh plans and loving your plan B, C, and D as much as you love your plan A, that like keeps a life exciting.
Yes. But when you had to pick this NGO before you went or when you were on the ground.
Uh the in Tanzania, we had to pick it before. Yeah, of course, because we were.
So how did you go about doing that process? Was that through like phone at the time, like phone calls, or I mean, how did you make that judgment? And yeah, I mean, everybody can make mistakes, but I mean, you were able to figure out that this guy was not a good person and you
Yeah,
corrected it. But like,
yeah, I think that's the more important part is like is make decisions fast enough and be agile enough to deal with anything that comes from it. Um, and so no, we had contacted a lot of different NGOs that were working in different fields, explaining the field we were interested in exploring and seeing if they could help us in any way, which was a little bit like um, kind of probably an obnoxious thing to ask, being like, can we um, give money to your community, but not through what you do, but through a way that we think is better, and can you help us do it for no benefit to yourself? And so, but we were like students, so that was like a normal thing for students to ask. And so we did that. And a few of them got back to us with different kind of ways it would work or wouldn't work. I do think some wanted to charge us money, like whatever it was. And so we ended up picking one that we thought was interesting enough. And then, but we were wrong. But then
mm,
it worked out. So
yeah.
good lessons and good stories. So at the end, I think we succeeded.
Anybody have any other questions? We have 12 minutes left and we'll be sharing a prayer at the end of our program. So I just wanted to see if anybody has any more questions. Let me take a look at the chat. Let me see anything in the chat. So, Fatuma, can you share the survey with everybody? And then we'll send it on email also. Do you have any kind of pictures or anything you want to share with us, Sal? Do you have anything that you want to share?
Yeah, I'll send you a link to my old YouTube channel where I have a lot of videos where I tell stories about yeah, different countries. So I'll share that link so that you can look at it. And
Okay,
then
then I'll email it to everybody. So that would be great. So if you could fill the survey format, that would be super. And if, I will also send the survey link via email in case, you don't get a chance to do it. But if you can now, while everything's fresh in your mind, that would be great. Um, Anything else anybody would like to ask? Oh, okay, so Sal shared this YouTube link with everybody, so that's good. And okay, super. Any other anything that you would like to kind of summarize or tell us
No,
about
I just
yourself?
thank you for organizing this, and it was fun to talk on the travel stuff and the faith stuff, and to dive deep into those old Tanzania memories,
You bring
and
your memories back.
and God willing, we'll
So
all
what I have a question, like I thought of something. Like of all the countries, like danger wise, like I saw there was something that you went like on a mountain really high up and like, like which are the ones like did you have to trek like on mountains to get somewhere and take pictures or like which countries were like physically challenging?
I mean, the most dangerous I would say is like downtown Philadelphia, where I once went on a walk. That was really scary.
Oh my
Um,
God.
and and I think there was a time where in Turkmenistan they don't like photos to be taken of like certain areas like the palace. And I
Where's
did
this?
in Turkmenistan, and I
Uh-huh.
had some friends who I met these random local guys in a restaurant. Actually, they were like they wanted to practice English, and then we ended up like hanging out. And they took me the next day in this residential tower that looked down into all of the areas that you weren't supposed to see from the ground. And so that was really cool that I got like this view that it was almost impossible to have. But um, no, and then dangerous, I always tried to travel in the most safe way as possible. I wasn't interested in like being in danger. So I wouldn't go anywhere if I thought that there was going to be anything really dangerous. And so just keeping like mindful of like what are our risks, but also more importantly, like what's the response to it? You know, like is there a way for me to get out of it? And what's the severity? You know, like some places have a really high risk of like pickpocketing, but it's a low severity. Whereas if it's a low risk of something scary, and then also who's targeted, you know, like people think, I remember growing up, it's like, oh, Central America's the murder capital of the world, but like they're not murdering tourists, you know, they're murdering people that are in the drug cartels. So but there are places which are very safe for locals and they are targeting tourists, you know, so I think it's an important question to always say, like, what are the risks here? What is the severity of it? Who's being targeted, and how can I respond if something happens to me? And that's kind of the structure that I use to determine my risk appetite of going somewhere. And then, yeah, I had some things happen, but those are more, you know, statistical anomalies than anything.
So which country was the like in your travels that you had the most dangerous experience in?
That's what I meant, like Philadelphia, like that stuff scares me.
Really? Philadelphia, like Philadelphia.
Yeah, or like San Francisco, I get really like that's less dangerous, but it makes me like really emotionally. It's hard, I think, to like walk by humans that are like in that state and not try and want to do something. And so, and I think of myself as like somewhat of an empath, and I try and like understand um the way systems work, and like I that like affects me for a whole day when I see that, and then to have to see that time and time and time again every single day, day in and day out, like that is emotionally draining in a way that is like incomparable, I think, to a lot of other.
So I can't help but asking, when you lived in Tel Aviv, did you get a chance to travel around?
Yeah, no, I turned 21 in Nablus in Palestine on top of a hill with my Palestinian friend from boarding school and her family after having this feast of all of this food taken directly from their garden and farm. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, I had some of the best experiences of my life in Palestine when I was living over there.
So Nablus was the only place that you got to see in the West Bank?
No, 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 that was just my birthday. But then I went to Bethlehem. I was in Jerusalem. Yeah, you know, we went maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 times.
What year was that about?
2011,
Mm.
fall
Was the
semester.
wall there by then?
There's a lot of wall. There was a lot of wall. It was like yeah, that was like not a great um like also like like emotion. It's like it was a hard place to be.
Hmm. You never visited Gaza on that trip?
No, at that time, like we absolutely like weren't that I don't think was a possibility.
Oh, okay.
I don't know when that happened, when it opened or closed, or how that exactly went down,
Hmm.
uh, but no, we weren't able to get there. But we did travel all around like the Holy Land generally, like Israel went to the Dead Sea, up to the north. We went to the desert, so like we were able to see a lot of stuff. So it was a great time. But I haven't been back since then.
Wow.
They
Are
strip searched me on my way out, and I haven't come to repay them the pleasure. So
so have you visited all your friends from high school recently?
yes, often we do. I was actually just on a road trip with some of my friends from high school. Recently, we were at the wedding of one of the friends. So it's not to as many as before or in as much depth, but but that's kind of like my core group of like key friends. And then actually, um, my childhood best friend has just arrived downstairs, and we're going to go hang out today,
Oh, that's fantastic.
hometown. So our parents were best friends, so it's more like a sibling relationship because we knew each other from when we were children. Like
Oh, thank you so much. This has been really, really fun. I've had such a great time chatting with you. I hope all of you have. Again, if you want to unmute, this is the last chance, and then we're gonna end the program. And the way we usually end our program is by listening to the reciter again. So I'm going to share my screen, and we'll listen to the Aden because it'll be soon time to pray for us anyway. And again, his name is Omar Hisham Arabi. So just 1 second. Let me see if I can get it. Okay, there we go.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
Thank you so much, and Jazakallah khairan and shukran to you, Brother Sal, and everybody for joining us, and to my lovely technical assistant, Fatuma Hydra. I'm really so deeply grateful. It was so much fun sharing your amazing story with us and your travels. And if you're on your way back, coming to stopping in New York, you have to come over, and
Well,
we'll invite you for food at our house.
yeah, amazing.
Please, we'd really love for you to be our guest. It would be so much fun. I might not be a great cook like the people in Algeria, but I'll try.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Really, it was just such a pleasure, and good luck with everything. And we have to kind of do this one more time in a couple of years and see how your story has evolved.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Everyone have a great
All
day.
right, have a great day. Bye bye. Enjoy your nieces and nephews.
Inshallah. Thank you.